Our visitors need to find their way around our site. It's a tricky thing to do well, and through all the experimentation of experienced web designers, a few paradigms have emerged. Bootstrap supports many of these, and we'll talk about some of them here, including navs, navbars, breadcrumbs, and pagination. Nav is the term that Bootstrap used to describe a couple of the different navigation paradigms available. It is a list of navigation links to other parts of your web page or site. Start with an unordered list with the nav class applied to it. You then add one of the two nav modifier classes to implement either a tab-based nav or a pill-based nav. In the case of tabs, if you want the tabs to toggle parts of your page on or off, you'll need to have the Bootstrap JavaScript. This is one of the few times when switching between these two styles is as simple as just swapping the classes. The navbar in Bootstrap is one of the more powerful components at your disposal. It is used to provide a responsive navigation area at the top or bottom of your page. When I say responsive, I of course mean mobile first responsive, which means that by default, the navbar is collapsed for viewing on mobile devices. The default navbar template, when viewed on a small screen, will contain the site branding information and a nice touch-friendly button to toggle a drop-down navigation panel containing the elements of your site navigation that you've included in the navbar. As the viewport expands, the collapsed list of navigation links is no longer collapsed and displays horizontally across the screen. It's a commonly used element of navigation interaction, and it's made very easy with Bootstrap. The navbar itself can include brand names and logos, navigation links, drop-downs, form elements such as logins or search bars, and buttons. The magic that makes the collapsible navbar menu work is in the Bootstrap JavaScript, so make sure you have that included in your page if you want this to work. Many different items can make up a navbar. The navbar header is where the branding of the site resides, along with a button that is used to toggle the drop-down when collapsed in the mobile state. Navbar nav wraps a number of navigation links, which can include submenu drop-downs as well. You can also include forms on your navbar. These can be useful for inline login areas or search forms. Buttons and text can be included on the navbar independent of the actual navigation links as well. And I'll point out that the groups of these navbar items can be floated to the left or right using the navbar-left and navbar-right classes. When it comes to aligning your navbar, you have a couple of options. The default navbar is contained within the rest of your content at the top of the page. But if you use the navbar-fix.top class on it, you can affix it to the very top of your browser window, where it will remain visible as you scroll through the rest of your page's content. Doing so will overlay it on the rest of your content, taking it out of the layout of the body, which means that you'll have to add some additional padding to your body to avoid having any content cut off by the navbar. Likewise, you can have your navbar fixed to the bottom of the page as well. If you don't need the navbar to remain fixed to the top of the browser window, but want it to span the top of your page and be attached to the top of your page, you can use the navbar-static.top class to do so. Let's head back to a demo and try out some of the navigation options that Bootstrap offers. Alright, let's start our look at navs by taking a look at the tabs element. So we have just here a regular unordered list that has the class nav, which indicates that it's a navigation element. And in this case, we're going to create tabs. So we're using the nav-tabs tag. Within it, just a list of list items. Each one of them is just a link. The first one here, we've given the class of active to indicate that this is the tab that we are on, and it will highlight it to indicate that that's where we are. So let me go ahead and run that, and as you might expect, we have a set of tabs here. Now the active one is this one here, where it's removed the bottom border, and we can tell that it's flowing down here into the main part of the content. So that's what we're looking for. And then the other tabs, which are inactive, will show up as links with the little pointy hand to indicate that this is something that we can click on and go to. We're not limited to simple buttons like that on the tab. We can also, for instance, add our drop down, the one that we've been working on or using in the other examples. So here we're just creating another list item. Oh, I didn't mean to replace the whole thing here. There we go. We're just going to add another list item of class drop down. And in here, instead of having a button to activate the drop down, I'm using a link, just an anchor element to activate the drop down. We still have the data dash toggle equals drop down. That's going to still tell it that now this link or this element, which is an anchor tag, this will be a toggle for a drop down. And then under that we have the nested unordered list here of drop down menu, and it's our same list that we've been working on. So if I update that, you see now that I have the extra tab up here, but this one has the caret and it's a drop down. So it's a lot of power and flexibility here in the tabs. Now I mentioned that we can just switch over to pill-based navigation by just simply changing it from nav tabs to nav pills. So let's go ahead and show that. Going to run that there, and there's no line here that indicates that it's a tab. It has these little, I guess they call them pills, that still indicate that there's a number of options that we can pick here, and one of them is active. Now we can change this to a stacked. We can have these things stacked up vertically if we'd like, and the way that we do that is we add the nav-stacked class to it, and this will take up the full width, so I'm just going to specify something smaller here. I update that there. Now you see that we have the stacked horizontally pill-based navigation. Our drop down still works, and we're in business with that. Of course, the big navigation element that we want to look at here is the Navbar. So let me pull over some Navbar code here and we'll talk about that. Alright, this is actually from, this code here is the Navbar code more or less from the Bootstrap site getting started templates. One of the basic templates has some of this Navbar code in there, and let me go ahead and run it and we can talk through kind of what's going on here. Alright, I've created two Navbars here. One of these is the default Navbar. It's this one here. This is the default Navbar. You can see that it's within a container. It's got a border around it, and it's the fixed width there. Now the other one is the static top. So this one here, the Navbar static top, that's this one right here. And the main difference here is that it's you can see it's a little bit wider in terms of the content, and it does stretch across the entire page, and there's no rounded edges. So you see the border here, there's a slight roundedness on the border. That roundedness is gone on this side, so it looks like it's a seamless full width Navbar at the top of our site. Alright, let's go ahead and look at what's inside of these Navbars. We'll start with this one here on the top, the Navbar static top. We have a container that will contain our content to match the width of the site. And then here's the first element of our Navbar. It's the Navbar header. That contains the brand information, the project name here, that's the brand, which is right there. You can have an image there or some sort of icon for your site. That would work just fine. This is the collapse button, and I will talk about that in a moment. This has a data toggle equals collapse, and then we give it a target, and we'll show you how that works here in a second here. After that, we have a div that surrounds essentially all of this content here, and this is the Navbar collapse. This is the stuff that when we have a narrow viewport, this is going to be collapsed and hidden by default on a mobile view or a narrow view of the site. And instead what will be shown is our toggle button here. Just go ahead and launch this in the viewer and take a look at what that looks like. So as I collapse here, you see that the content of the menu is gone, but we're left with this toggle button here. And as I toggle it, then the rest of the content that was in our drop down appears. Now the reason that they're both appearing here is that the target on these buttons is the same. We could make it so only one of them came down. But this is what makes it a very usable experience on a mobile device. This is more or less the width that you're going to have on your mobile device, and we can still get our branding on there, and our menu, our navigation is still there, but it's not intrusive on the design. Okay, so that's the way the styling there works. There's our toggle button, and that toggles this div. This is our collapsible content of our Navbar. So within that, we have a few items that we're going to look at. We have the Navbar nav, which is a collection of links, just like our other navs, like the tabs and the pills. It's just a list of links. Okay, which are these links here, as well as a drop down, just like we had in the other navs, the pills and the tabs. We have the little drop down there. So there's the drop down nav item there. Okay, that's the end of the Navbar nav. Next I have this login form here, which is just a form of class navbar-form, and I've used the helper class navbar write to pull this over and write justify it in the navbar. And these forms work very much like the inline forms that we looked at in another module. Same thing with the other navbar here, except I have the just another example of what we could do with the form. Instead of a login, we just have a search functionality here at the end of our navbar. Okay, so those are the ones that are going to be fixed to the top of the screen. As we scroll, they're going to scroll on up with everything else on our page. The other option that we have is the fixed navbars. So let me go ahead and pull in some code for that. And I'm going to bring this one up in the viewer. Alright, so here we have our navbar at the top of this one. It's the same as the static top one, but now it's fixed. So as I scroll through our content, let me shorten this so we can make it more obvious what's going on here. As I scroll, you see that the navbar stays fixed to the top of the screen. But the problem that you notice here is that some of our content is cut off. As I mentioned in the slides, we have to add some additional CSS to add additional padding to the body element so that the navbar is not going to be overwriting content. By default, the navbar is 50 pixels high, so I'm going to add some CSS here that will pad the top of our body by 70 pixels. So now we should have a 20 pixel gap between the top of the navbar, or the bottom of the navbar, and the top of our content. I'll refresh that and we'll go back and take a look. And as you can see, we now have that gap between our navbar and our content, but the navbar still stays fixed to the top of the screen, and it will still collapse the way we expect it to and remain fixed to the top of the screen on mobile devices as well. Alright, so lots of different ways that we can implement navigation in our site. A navbar is a very important part of many site designs, and the navbar that Bootstrap provides us is very standard. You see those that style of navbar on a good number of sites, and it's very functional, very easy to use once you've jumped in and used it a little bit and learned the various different things that you can put into the navbar. A very difficult thing to get right on your own, and Bootstrap makes it easy.